Yeah, so after that match, Sex attacks Jarrett and company before Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream, makes his TNA debut.
Oh my god.
This is a big month. There's so many debuts this month.
So was last month. That just seems to be the ethos of the company.
Yeah, there's people showing up left, right, and center. Like 2 or 3 people surprise us every week. So Dusty Rhodes main events the next show. Announced main event was Triple X against the team of the Road Warriors and Jeff Jarrett, which I'm not sure why Jarrett needed the Road Warriors, given he beat all of Triple X himself the week before.
Because it would have been 3-on-1 this time, Garrett.
So there's a promo in the middle of the show where Dusty Rhodes comes out and he starts cutting this promo about how would you rather have Flair wrestle Steamboat or would you rather have a midget jerk off in a trash can?
I don't know, Puppet's pretty great.
Which, by the way, funny to go back to the denying Vince Russo's involvement in the company watch, where during that period we were like, Russo has nothing to do with any of this, and now Dusty Rhodes is here on a 2003 show citing that as an example of why Vince Russo shouldn't be involved in wrestling.
As they're saying it, like, still, about different things.
Yeah.
It's like, we can't trust this company.
I think this is the very month where it's, I think like the facade begins to drop because like Jerry's more or less out of power. The like creative is running through Jarrett by all accounts, which is the reason you see a lot more Russo ideas on the show because Jarrett, or Jeff even, I should have to specify, they're both named Jarrett. Jeff is having more of the final say over Jerry, so that's the reason you're seeing more and more and more and more Vince Russo ideas on these shows. But as we were talking about, Dusty doing that promo where he's talking about would you rather have these traditional wrestling icons or would you rather have this sports entertainment, they go face to face. Like, this will never make sense to me. This is weekly pay-per-view. We've talked about this before, where like if you're setting anything up on weekly pay-per-view, it should always be for the following week because people have already bought the pay-per-view. So people don't know that Vince Russo and Dusty Rhodes are going to be wrestling on this pay-per-view until into the second hour. Like, it's fine on a TV show. People can just change the channel. Like, nobody's going to be like, oh god, I just found out that Vince Russo and Dusty Rhodes are wrestling on this show. I'm going to buy the pay-per-view.
Gotta call my pay-per-view provider.
Yeah, dial up DirecTV to desperately get in that last second order. That's not how anybody is going to operate. So, like, I'll never understand why they do this, where they, like, and that's a pretty big main event. Russo and Triple X against Dusty Rhodes, the Road Warriors, and Jeff Jarrett is your 8-man tag team main event, with the stipulation that if Team Russo wins, Russo could pick all the challengers for the titles the following week. Like, that's a big stipulation. That's a big match. And they just don't advertise it. They just make the match and do the match in the same night. That makes no sense.
I'll tell you right now, it's because Russo thinks they're booking TV. He literally Freudian slipped and said TV one week.
Yeah, these shows, they're entirely booked as television, like top to bottom. They're just TV shows.
Which is why it doesn't work. I honestly don't even think the monthly pay-per-view model is necessarily bad. I don't think it works in this era, but perhaps it could work in another. But no one's booking it in a way that's conducive to that system. It's all being treated as if it was TV, which is not how it should work.
Yeah, like the idea of booking a weekly pay-per-view, like the philosophy behind that is fundamentally different than booking weekly television. You have to have entirely different ideas, entirely different philosophies, entirely different ways of doing things, because you have to give people their $10 value for money every single week. You can't just be like, this is a setup show. You're asking people for $10. You can't give them a setup show for $10.
Yeah, it's rough.
So yeah, that brings us to the main event, which there's a lot of star power in that main event. You have, well, mostly on the other side, you have Dusty, the Road Warriors, and Jarrett as a tag team. The Road Warriors' only TNA match as a team. I thought the match was pretty disappointing. There wasn't much to it.
I liked it, but I think I just liked it because I like seeing these guys interact with each other. I like seeing Dusty and the Road Warriors doing stuff with Loki and Christopher Daniels,
My favorite, like, weird Road Warriors interaction was at the end of the January 8th show where the Road Warriors do a run-in to try and save Jarrett until Styles shows up and just lays out both of the Road Warriors by himself.
Well, I can say he's a heavyweight now.
That's true. He hits Animal with a missile dropkick, hits Hawk with an Enziguri, and he's just standing tall having laid out the Road Warriors 1-on-2.
I can't believe they agreed to that.
Yeah, it is fun to see these guys. There was a fun Road Warriors interview on this very show as well, where the most notable thing for me is as Animal's cutting his promo and Goldilocks has the microphone in his face, the spike on the shoulder pad of Animal constantly like stabbing Goldilocks in the face, and she's
like, fucking...
she's trying to swat it out of the way. It's very enjoyable.
Goldie's facial expressions have always been a true peak of this show.
It's funny, every week I haven't put them in because they just feel like, gossip. But every couple of weeks in like the PW Torch, there's this story, like a story about how Goldilocks has heat again because people think she doesn't understand the business or she's going into business for herself. It's like, she's really good on these shows. Leave her alone.
Well, you know what it is? It's just like anyone who gets over that they didn't deem worthy to get over.
Also, Goldilocks got a concussion on one of these shows.
Yeah, Goldie's taking bumps and shit. Fuck off.
Yeah, you leave Goldie alone. But that match ends when Mr. Wrestling 4, who was introduced earlier in the show, comes out, attacks Dusty, and reveals himself to be Nikita Koloff.
By God. I was like, oh my God, it's some guy.
Not a big fan of 80s NWA, Liam?
That didn't exist. I know what you're talking about.
Oh, everything that happened before you were born just didn't happen?
No, the early 90s it happened.
Okay, so everything that happened 5 years before you were born or earlier didn't happen?
Yep.
Oh, fair enough.
Kabashi's young boy trial run happened, obviously. Mm-hmm. But, everything before that.
Fake news.
Basically.
So the following week, Dusty and Nikita Koloff tried to reconcile because they used to be a tag team in the 80s, the Superpowers, during the...
It was a badass segment, though, wasn't it? It was a badass fucking segment.
Because, like, during the heat of the Cold War, you had the Russian character, like the American Dream and the Russian Nightmare, coming together to form the Superpowers, to put the political differences aside and become a team. Cody would be very proud of all those political differences being put aside. But that's where he got the ideas.
Should have done that with Anthony Ogogo.
Yeah, they should have put their political differences aside. That's true. But yeah,
finally, the British and the Americans coming together like everyone is ecstatic for.
Yay!
The two best countries.
So yeah, Dusty invites Nikita Koloff out. It's like, stand up on the announce table so I can look at you eye to eye, and he cuts this promo about how we were once friends and pals, and you should be on the side of tradition because that's where you came from. And we're still like not certain of where like Nikita Koloff's loyalties lie. We're not sure, does he just have issues with Dusty? Again, this is the same story they told with AJ, and the same story they kind of told with Raven, and even like it's kind of with Percy Pringle. There's just a lot of people playing both sides here. But Nikita Koloff, we don't know, is it just a Dusty issue he has, or has he joined sex?
He's never coming back. I don't know how. He's never showing up again.
You will be pleased to know this one gets a payoff.
By God.
So you can look forward to that. I'm not sure it's in February, but I think it's in February, but I can't say for certain. Because like so much of this stuff doesn't get payoffs, because you get that Schiavone segment where he comes out, he cuts this promo on Mike Tenay, and they seem like they're going somewhere. And that's Tony Schiavone's only appearance on Impact until 2020 when he shows up as part of AEW on an ad with Tony Khan. So like he disappears off this show for literally 18 years and then pops up again. And so many of the people on these shows just show up and they disappear. Like the Rock and Roll Express, who we'll talk about in a minute, show up and disappear. So many people.